Everyone, and welcome. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Canadian soprano Allison Cecilia Arends. So, Allison has been praised for her stunningly beautiful voice and empathetic acting, and she has performed leading roles in opera houses and concert halls across Canada and internationally. And we are so thrilled that she's going to be joining us here at the Cathedral Bluffs Symphony Orchestra for our season opening concert, 40 and Beyond, on Saturday, October 4th at 8 p.m., conducted by Martin McDonald. And this concert celebrates 40 years of CBSO with an exciting program featuring Beethoven's Egmont Overture and his iconic Symphony Number 5. Alongside of this, we have works by Mozart, Bellini, Gounod, and Puccini. Allison, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great that you're here, and I'm happy that you're healthy and ready to go. So, to start off, can you tell us a bit about your studying background? Where did you first train, and who were some of your most important teachers and mentors?
Absolutely. I have been really fortunate all the way through that I've had nothing but amazing teachers and mentors right from childhood. So I started as most kids do in terms of their music lessons in piano. And I got into voice because I love to sing. And my mother, as a way to bribe me to continue with piano for longer, said, if you keep up with your piano a bit longer, I'll let you take voice lessons as well, because my piano teacher taught both.
Right.
Then through high school, I was very involved in the choral program at a very strong music school in Regina. So had a fantastic choral teacher and voice teacher there, Hart Godden and Dinah Woolrich. And after I graduated from high school, I went off to the University of Victoria and completed my Bachelor of Music in Voice, studying with Alexandra Browning, who was an absolutely phenomenal teacher. And I had so many great teachers when I was at UVic as well. Dr. Harold Krebs was song lit and theory teacher, and we still keep in touch, as well as with all of my voice teachers. Then I carried on to University of Toronto to do my master's in opera at the opera school there. And was very fortunate to study with Mary Morrison and continued on with her for quite a while after I graduated. I think studied with her for probably about 7-8 years. And probably for maybe 9 years now, I've studied intermittently with W. Stephen Smith, who's in the States. He's in Chicago, teaches at Northwestern, and has taught at various other institutions, including Juilliard. Really phenomenal pedagogue. So unfortunately, I don't get to go there often, especially as of late and during the pandemic. But he's such a great pedagogue that I find I can get a lot of longevity between lessons, and he really sets me up for success.
Well, that's really interesting because you don't really hear often the continuation of the studies with so many professional musicians. I'm a retired professional orchestral musician myself, and very seldom when you're having a job, say with the Toronto Symphony or any other symphony orchestra, you hear a musician say, "Oh, I'm still studying with people." So that's great. That's interesting because probably it's, especially in the operatic world and being a singer, there are a lot of really complex extra things that you have to continue to be on top of. Kind of like I guess the best way to compare it is a doctor with new surgical techniques or things like that. So let's just move on for a bit. So you had such an incredible wide performing background already. So can you think of some particular amazing milestone roles or concerts that have really shaped you so much as an artist?
Sure, absolutely. And when I was thinking about this, I realized that some of the things that have been most impactful for me aren't necessarily some of, the big things or necessarily, the big, larger gigs or larger international things, but had more to do with the people that I was working with and the impact they had on me. So we were talking just before about experience doing Julius Caesar, Handel's Julius Caesar. which first I did in Italy and then repeated in Toronto. And that had a tremendous impact on me, particularly working with Tom Diamond. He was the stage director, and I love working with Tom. Love, love, love working with him. And just the way he is able to pull things out of people and inspire people. I feel like his manner of direction is less, do this. It's more, let's see what your instincts are, and then let's build on that. And it's very conversational. And I love that style of music making and acting and rehearsing that collaborative effort. So that was a biggie.
Yeah.
I would also say, when I was in my undergrad, I went to Germany and performed with Helmut Rilling for the Bach Academy. He had an ensemble based out of Stuttgart. And trying to remember everything we did. We did Mendelssohn's Elijah, a whole bunch of smaller Bach works, the Bruckner Te Deum. That was a pretty mind-blowing thing because as a conductor, he is so minimalist, like in terms of his movements, and he is so humble. And I remember one of the first things he said to us when we all arrived is he said, "This is not about you. This is about this composer. You're just a medium to communicate what this
Wow. Check your what was this that saying during the We Are the World, the performance of all of these amazing musicians and pop stars that came into a room and they recorded this piece. And there was a big sign above the door, check your, oh God, what was it again? Check your, when you're full of yourself. What?
Ego?
That's the word. I was looking for the, see, I'm 66 now, so I lose words. Check your ego at the door, because there were so many massive pop stars all in one space. Check your ego at the door, turn that off. It's not about you. It's about this piece and what we're here to do today. And so that's a very interesting, enlightening thing. I've actually, in my years of a musician, never heard that before from a conductor. But anyway, so here's a fun question. Why opera? Why singing? Was there a moment when you knew this was what you wanted to dedicate your life to?
It was a very interesting process for me. So there are some kind of fun stories from when I was really little. I don't even remember this, but it's one of my parents' favorite stories. I think I was probably about 3 or 4, maybe 4. And my mother went out to go to a movie with a friend or something and left my dad in charge. And she comes back and it's super late, like after 10 p.m. And I'm sitting like this far from the television, completely transfixed, watching the 3 tenors. And my mom looks at my father and says, like, "What are you doing? Why isn't she in bed?" And he was like, "I couldn't tear her away." And as a little kid, I'd, take a shower and I'd kind of fake opera sing. And I stumbled upon just a few years ago, I'd totally forgotten about this. I think it was from grade 3 where we wrote kind of an autobiography and answered questions. And one of the questions was, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I wrote opera singer.
You're kidding. Wow.
I totally forgot about that because after that, I've always loved music. Like it's just in me. But there was a long period where there were so many other things I was interested in. My favorite subjects in high school were math and physics. So there were times I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a math teacher. I mean, I went through, a whole slew of things that I may want to do. But music was kind of this ever-present thing. And I think what really did it were my high school teachers, my voice teacher, Dinah Woolrich, who's a very close friend. We kept in touch. And I've been out of high school for like 25 years. And also Hart Godden, who was the school choral teacher. And I think particularly with him, he saw something in me before other people did. And the voice was still, fairly small, was still developing. But one of his talents is hearing people and going, "There's a seed there. We're going to develop that." And just that kind of encouragement and witnessing these people and just their love and passion for music and going, "Oh, maybe I could do this."
Right.
And I think by the time I graduated, it was a strong feeling of I can't not do this because the reality is there's a lot of things I could have done. There's a lot of things I'm very passionate about. I was always a strong student. But it was just like, almost felt like a calling. I know that's cheesy, but I think most musicians feel that.
It's a very, very common thing that a lot of musicians say. They say, I didn't choose music, music chose me. And a very interesting comparison or connection to math and sciences. Many, many musicians are extremely good or interested in math and sciences too, because music is an exact science as well, as you and I both know. So let's move on to some interesting things and connections to the Cathedral Bluffs Symphony Orchestra. So many of our audience members may not know this, but you actually were a past winner of the Cathedral Bluffs Symphony Orchestra former vocal competition. Can you share what that experience meant to you and what that was all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the Clifford Pool vocal competition. And I remember the year I won, I sang Ach, ich liebte from Mozart's Die Entführung aus dem Sarai. It's probably one of my favorite Mozart operas, especially in terms of the soprano repertoire. And so it was so exciting to get to sing one of these arias with the symphony. And also I had a wonderful working relationship with Norman Reintam, the conductor at the time, and went on to do some other things with him, also with the Estonian community and this kind of thing. And when I was reflecting on this, I think probably all musicians are this way, maybe singers especially, is our need for affirmation. And it's kind of a dangerous potential pitfall because there's so much rejection. And yet I think we are kind of hungry for and craving that affirmation and that bit of recognition that is a sign that, oh, I do have something, I do need to keep going.
Yeah.
So while
it's human nature, but it's especially much more predominant with musicians. I think orchestral musicians as well as opera singers, because you're putting so much effort and work at home. I call it the iceberg syndrome. You see this little top piece of an iceberg, and that's the performance. And then underneath the water is this giant, giant, massive thing, which is all the work we do at home to prepare for that 1 or 2 or 10 performances. So following that win, you performed with an orchestra early in your career. How does that feel now returning in this Milestone 40th anniversary season opening?
Oh, it's very exciting. I mean, in terms of musical experiences, I've done a little bit of everything within the classical genre, but I really love performing with orchestras.
Yeah.
Whether it's oratorio or opera or concert repertoire, it's that sort of fullness of sound that
And that brings a sense of nostalgia with a reflection of the early connection to the CBSO. But also, if you can take us through the experience of standing on the stage with the orchestra's in a pit, and now you're going to be standing on the stage with the orchestra is right behind you. So there's two different ways of approaching that, volume-wise, acoustics-wise. Tell our listeners and our audience how different that is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in some ways I approach it very similarly at this stage in my career, and in some ways it's a little bit different. I mean, you don't have a conductor boom right in front of you in your peripheral, or actually they are in your peripheral, but they're in your peripheral over here. But I think there is more of a sense of you do the work ahead of the performance. So you understand sort of tempi and how much time you want to take and that feel. And then there is a sense of, as the soloist, you are taking a little bit of a leadership role as well. Whereas with, say, an opera, where there are so many factors, there's like however many other singers and characters on stage. There's, moving pieces, there's set, there's costume. Like there's so many things that could fall apart just because of staging. So there's much more dependency there, I think, for a downbeat. In terms of volume, I think I have learned now at this stage to approach it very similarly. I think as a young singer, it's very tempting to want to push and to be very conscious of, oh, I need to be heard, I need to be heard, I need to be heard. I'm going to sing big, big, big. And as you get older, well, number one, the voice grows. So you just produce more sound. So you don't have to do that. And
Right.
hope using the appropriate repertoire. But I think something that just occurred to me at some point, probably in my 30s, I went, it is not my job to push. It's my job to do the work and to do the training and to be projecting healthily and properly through resonance and this kind of thing. But it's not my job to try to, go over top of that. That's part of the collaborative effort with the conductor. So yeah.
That's interesting because it's of course it's a push and shove, like, oh, listen to me, or
Right.
in the case of a brass player like myself, who can play the loudest, and it's
You're
it's
always going to be.
indeed true that the older you get, the more you realize, oh, you don't need to push, you don't need to play this like that loud or be the most important thing on the stage. There are other people that are, or other sounds or other things happening that are equally as important.
Yeah. I feel like now it's more emphasis on longevity. It's,
Yeah.
rather than, when you're a young artist, it's like you want to make that performance perfect because also you're trying to get more work. So there's that sense of kind of proving yourself. Whereas
You are as good as your last gig.
totally. Whereas it's
So
like now my goal is I want to sing healthily until I'm in my 60s, hopefully beyond. And
yeah,
that's where this lies.
it's such a and it's and you can totally relate. I can totally relate. You can, and many other musicians can totally relate because it's one performance. There are no do-overs. Can we do that again? Can everybody go outside and have a coffee? Come back in, we'll start again. No, it's one. And so there's so many factors happening. So let's move on. And you've sung everything from Mozart to Verdi to new Canadian works. Do you have a favorite opera composer, something that you especially connect with?
Definitely. I think as a sort of subgenre, oratorio is something that is very dear to my heart, partly because a lot of where I started as a teen, as a kid, was in choral music. So there's this very strong link from choral into the oratorio. What I love about oratorio is it's very strongly focused and centered on the music. And
Can
on
you
that,
give an explanation of what oratorio means? Because there are a lot of listeners that may not even know what the terminology of oratorio means.
absolutely. So an oratorio is a liturgical or religious work, or it's based on usually some kind of liturgical biblical text. And there is a strong sense of storytelling and a through story, much like an opera. But the difference is usually, I say usually because sometimes now it's starting to be more, it's not staged. Traditionally, it was not staged. So it's more of a stand and present. And
It was in the church.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
That's where it started. And there was always an orchestra, a choir, and often, not necessarily always, soloists.
right. In a
So
cold church, in a windy church, in a blustery church.
before heating, back in
Before
16.
heating, yes, yes, yes. And
Totally.
is there a role or composer? So, did you mention who the composer yet? I forgot.
My all-time favorite is Bach. I often
Bach.
say to people, if somebody came along and put a gun to my head or something and said, you can only sing one composer for the rest of your life, hands down Bach. And that goes back to very early on. I fell in love with Bach probably. I mean, I grew up hearing classical music, but fell in love with his vocal works probably at the age of 12, 13, not being able to sing them yet, but just loving the sound. But I also really love Debussy's vocal works. I've always been a huge lover of his works, especially his
Did you say
earlier.
Debussy?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
Yeah. And especially his earlier works written for soprano was written for a particular high voiced soprano. So I've always loved how those sit. That would be another one. And in terms of not necessarily sound, although I love the sound as well, but just kind of how it feels in the voice and how it sits. I've always loved singing Handel and bel canto. And it's written in a sense where it's a lot of emphasis on legato and line and on the quality of the voice. Bel canto, beautiful singing. So, you get usually these long, beautiful legato lines, but then you get the fireworks. You kind of get to go up and show off and come back down. So I
Right,
love
right. Fireworks. Right, fireworks. Kind of like in the Amadeus film with the one soprano
yes.
who is going all over the place. Yes, I
Too
remember. I
many
remember.
notes, I
Too
think
many
was
notes. Too many notes. Yeah.
love the too many notes repertoire.
Is there a composer or role, operatic role you haven't sung yet, but hope to one day?
Yes, definitely. I love all languages. I love singing in all languages, but I haven't sung a lot of French opera. I've done a couple, but I love so much of the French opera. Unfortunately, it's not performed a lot. This year at COC, they're doing 2 French operas, which I'm so excited to hear. But I would love to sing Manon by Massenet, the
Hmm.
title role, and also Juliet from Gounod's Romeo and Juliet. Those are
Right.
2 roles love to do.
Interesting. So let's move on to the opening concert you're going to be performing with CBSO, the Cathedral Bluffs Symphony Orchestra, 40 and beyond. So we have 4 works that you're going to be performing some operatic pieces from. The Mozart, and I'm going to let you pronounce the German because I will completely destroy the German. Can you tell us a little bit about the first piece of Mozart you're going to be singing?
Yes. So first, I'm singing Ruhe sanft, mein holdes Leben, and it's from the Mozart's opera Saide, and it's not an opera that is done frequently. Probably not even ever, really. Maybe over in Europe. It's a one-act opera or an unfinished opera, and one of his earlier works. But the music, especially this aria, is so exquisite. It's just, I think, one of Mozart's talents was writing really great, memorable melodies. And I think
Wow,
there's a strong example of that in this particular aria.
beautiful. And so the next piece from Bellini.
Yep. So, Qui la voce from I Puritani. I have not performed this one yet, and it's one I have wanted to perform for so long. So I was so fortunate that when Martin and I were going back and forth deciding on program, he gave me an incredible amount of freedom in selecting repertoire. And I went, okay, I want to do a couple pieces, like challenge myself and do a couple pieces that have been on my wish list for a really long time, and I just haven't had the opportunity to do yet. So Qui la voce is one of them. It's a mad scene from I Puritani, and quite a long aria. It's got what's called a cavatina and a cavaletta. So the cavatina is the slower, more legato section. And then the cavaletta is a shorter, faster section that gets all the vocal pyrotechnics as well.
Right,
So I'm
right.
very excited to
And
sing
you're
that.
you're not going to be doing a quick costume change between each aria, obviously.
No.
No, no. Okay, so the next piece, Gounod.
Yeah. So usually we just call this the poison aria. Is often how we shorten it. And I mean, everybody,
Amour,
yeah, amour ranime mon courage.
love it.
So
I can't say it.
all good. That's what I'm here for. And I mean, everybody knows the story of Romeo and Juliet. I'm
Yep.
sure people have read it. So this is the scene where she takes the bottle of poison, which is going to put her to sleep,
Mm,
which ends up, as we know, being this whole mishap. Romeo comes, thinks she's dead, kills himself. She wakes up, then she stabs herself as well. But this is right before she drinks that bottle. And it's this sort of psychological process of, do I do this? Do I not? Do I do this? Do I not? Because not only is she making the choice to ingest something that is going to put her in a state of sedation or sleep or comatose, but also she's making a choice about her fate ultimately, because to be with Romeo, she needs to abandon her family, and
yeah,
she's essentially an outcast.
yeah.
So there's some interesting dramatic stuff going on there.
Interesting. And then the last piece from Puccini.
Yes. So O mio babbino caro from Gianni Schicchi, and probably one of the most well-known operatic melodies. Everybody's going to know it.
Oh yeah, sing a little bit of it.
Yeah. So it's the O mio babbino caro. I'm sure I'm in the wrong key, but anyway.
Wow, that sounded great. Even in our little recording, I'm looking. Oh my God, your voice is so stunning and beautiful and warm and delicious and chocolatey.
Oh,
So
thank
you have a
you. And
chocolate voice.
I love, well, chocolate is my favorite, so that's very appropriate.
That's great.
Uh,
That's great. So though each of these arias are incredible gems, but I can imagine each present a unique challenge, whether technical, dramatic, emotional. What stands out for you when you're preparing them?
um, the first one, the Mozart, the Ruhe sanft, I think what is challenging about a lot of Mozart, especially for my voice type, which is what's called a coloratura, which a coloratura is a voice that sings those upper pitches and can do a lot of the fast notes. Um, he tends to write in a pretty consistently high range. What is lovely about bel canto, like the Bellini, is you get to also use your middle voice more. With Mozart, I find it just takes more time to build it into the voice because sometimes parts of it can be awkward. I mean, there's a reason why as singers, they always say, always bring a Mozart to your audition because it shows everything. It's like the ultimate technique test.
It's the
Um,
same for the French horn. You always have to play a Mozart horn concerto.
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So I think that's the challenge of that one. In Qui la voce, probably a lot of it is just stamina because
Hmm.
it's I think about an 8 minute or
Hmm.
so aria. So and also something that is challenging, ironically, in both Handel and bel canto, which are a couple hundred years apart, but vocally written in ways that are very similar. And another similarity is there's a lot of repeated text. So great thing about Italian opera, most of it, less text to memorize. Difficult
Mm.
things, a lot of the same things over and over. So part of our job as a singer is to really get into the subtext. Like, why do I need to say I love you, 3, 4 times? How can I make it different? In a way that doesn't come across as affected because there is something unnatural when you think about singing text, like we don't do this in real life, and it takes twice as long to sing a line as it does to speak it. So it's finding a way to still communicate in a manner that is authentic, but also honors the music.
Well, we don't have to pinpoint the certain pop stars of today that have songs that just have basically 3 words, but
Or
I totally
notes.
or notes. It's the Taylor Swifts or the Drakes in the world. So but again, telling a story and Puccini and the
Yes.
Gounod.
So the O mio babbino caro, probably the challenging thing about this one, I would say it's not that it's the least challenging. It's that it's a really good fit and it's much shorter than the other arias. But the challenge of this one is it is so well known. Everybody knows it. So the stakes are a little bit higher in terms of not only accuracy, obviously, which you always want as a musician, but kind of putting your own stamp on it. And a cool tidbit about this O mio babbino caro. So the last gig I did with CBSO, which I think was in like 2015, 2016, we did the full opera Gianni Schicchi, and I performed the role of Lauretta, and she's the one who sings this aria. So that's kind of
Oh,
that I'm doing it with CBSO for the second time.
that's great. That's amazing. So, amongst these 4, do you have a favorite child?
I know I was looking at that question, and I honestly can't pick one. I love them all, and I
Yeah.
love them for different
You
reasons.
can't compare apples and oranges. They're both delicious. You can't
Exactly.
compare chocolate with ice cream. They're both delicious.
Totally. I
So,
mean, I think the Gounod is so interesting textually and dramatically. There's so much going on. I mean, I have a pretty special place in my heart for the Mozart, the Ruhe sanft, because I actually first learned that and performed that in my undergrad, which is now over, 20 years ago. And I put it away for a really long time. And during the pandemic, when, there was virtually no performing, maybe the odd virtual thing, it gave me a chance to really kind of reflect and listen and go, what do I really love? Like, what brings me joy? And I think it's just one of the most beautiful songs. So, but I love them all.
And, so for this October 4th concert, there are going to be a lot of people in the audience that have never, ever heard a symphony orchestra live, let alone a symphony orchestra that is accompanying a live opera singer. So, what do you think? What do you hope the audience will experience, and what can they expect? And should they do homework at home? Should they not? What sort of should they throw roses onto the stage after your performance?
Always will. um, I do not think they need to do any homework. I mean, for sure, it's like anything. You go into an art gallery, and the more you know about Monet, the more you can pick out these things and appreciate them. And there's definitely that element to classical music. And classical music, while being an art, is also highly academic. That being said, I don't think that's an audience's job. I think it's our job as a performer to try to communicate those things.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of going to live performance, there's nothing like it in the world.
No.
And especially classical music, because it's all acoustic. And you were talking before about this, you only get one shot for a performance. And there's that element of it being fleeting and kind of embracing the imperfections that go along with it. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about live performance. It's what makes me love live music and live theater, as opposed to, I love film and recordings too, but any day, the live experience, and you can't get a sense of the sheer kind of stereo sound of a symphony orchestra and also of an opera singer until you go and you experience it live. So,
and it's a type of energy that you can only actually, as a musician myself and yourself, that feeling of that there's something in the hall that that people are paying attention to what you're doing, and they're not on their phones. They're actually sitting there in the dark watching everything you do.
yeah,
And that kind of energy, that sort of aura is unique, that many musicians really, really enjoy. And
absolutely.
so now you've performed internationally, in Austria, Germany, China, and Jamaica, and more. Do you have a favorite memory from singing abroad? You and I performed together in Italy, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when we did Julius Caesar. But
Yeah.
do you have a certain country is warm or performance that you think, oh, I want to do that again?
That is really hard. China was an interesting experience largely because of all of the concert halls. It was quite a large tour. I don't even remember half of the locations. It was a whirlwind, sometimes moving every day, every second day. And the theaters there are state of the art. Like, some of them look like spaceships. Like, I felt like I'd walked into an episode of Star Trek or something.
Wow.
That was a very cool thing. And they're built in a way that acoustically, they're quite amazing in terms of the engineering. But in terms of like my experience performing, probably definitely that experience in Italy doing Julius Caesar. Like that, there's just something about that for me kind of penetrated and has never left since.
Yeah.
Also, when I believe it was the summer after I finished undergrad, I went with a close friend and a collaborative pianist. We went as a duo to the Franz Schubert Institute, which is located outside of Vienna, and studied there for, I think, 6 weeks. And we were studying only German Lieder, in other words, German songs written for voice and piano. And part of that experience was also taking philosophy classes and really talking about the poetry and the context of how and when these poems and these songs were written. So that was a really cool experience. And we got to perform in one hall where it was one of the pianos that Schubert played on. We got to perform in the church where Mozart wrote one of his really famous choral pieces, Ave Verum Corpus. That was really very
That gives
cool.
you chills. That gives you chills. I've experienced that many times in Europe where someone would say, oh, by the way, Mozart conducted here. I'm like, what? Okay. Yeah, it's really neat. So you've sung in a lot of different concert settings, from Beethoven's Ninth to Strauss's Four Last Songs, which is my absolute favorite piece, especially since there's a wonderful horn solo, and
Oh, yes.
Jesse Norman's recording is my favorite personally. But how do you approach concert singing differently from a fully staged opera?
Vocally, I approach it exactly the same.
Mm,
Especially if we're talking concert repertoire that is romantic, written in the romantic era, like Four Last Songs. The singing is, I think, very similar to how I would approach a Strauss opera, for instance, or a Bellini opera, Verdi opera. Probably the only time there feels like there are some differences stylistically in the choices I would make is particularly with Bach, where it's written in a way that's more instrumental. Um, I think the biggest difference, though, between concert and opera is opera, you're going to have that extra dramatic element of fully staged, interacting with other characters, not singing as yourself. So there's a lot of extra research for sure that goes into the story. You know, is it based on a book? Do I need to read this piece of literature? Do I need to do some character sketches? This kind of thing. There isn't that same sense of context with a lot of the concert repertoire. So the interpretive element is just as strong. You just have to go about it differently. It's not, looking at Juliet's story. It's going, okay, well, here's this poetry. What is this poetry about? Line by line, what was the historical context in which it was written? So there's still a research element to it, but when you get up and perform it, it feels quite different.
One thing that came to mind is that if you're standing there in front of the orchestra and you're wearing a pretty dress, say, and you're performing this or that piece, or the Mozart or the Bellini or the Gounod, um, is there something extra that you need to do to transform people into that opera, because they don't see the staging around you, they don't see all the costumes, they don't see what era it's from?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it is very challenging. I think about this also like in auditions, like how do you try to sing this one aria that's not in context? And generally in concert singing, we don't move around as much. We're much more stationary. It's sort of part of the tradition. And there's also practical reasons for it. You need to have contact with your conductor. It is very challenging. And I think a big challenge for singers, I think this is probably across the board, is what the heck do I do with my hands?
Yeah.
Because gesticulating is very different when you're saying something over this long, drawn out phrase. So it's finding ways to use your body and to communicate with your face that doesn't seem kind of performative, like still seems very natural and comes from an authentic place. But I think the one, and I learned this was ingrained in me from a very young age, is, knowing your text, like know your text, know what you're singing about word for word, and that level of preparation. But something that took me a little bit longer to learn, and Tom Diamond in Italy, I mean, he's an incredible acting coach, is also that acting is a craft in the
Mhm.
same way with music. It's a craft. So is acting. And it's,
Yeah.
you can feel as in love or as passionate internally as you want, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate externally. So
Right.
there is a limit to learning how do I portray that, and things have to be a bit bigger on stage as well. So yeah, that kind of preparation, I think.
That's great. That's a good insight, because I always think that personally myself, like, I'm holding the French horn in my hand, so I know what I'm doing with my hands. But standing in front of an audience where you're not holding an instrument, the microphone, you're not even holding a microphone, nothing.
It's
Yeah,
incredibly vulnerable. Like
yeah,
it's such a vulnerable thing.
yeah. So, you are speaking to us from your studio, and you've worked with many young singers, and you're a teacher and mentor. So, tell us a little bit about that, and what kind of the best advice you're giving. That there's a famous saying like, "Oh my God, I sound like my mother," or "Oh, here I am telling my student exactly what my teacher told me, and I didn't do it until it finally hit." Like, "Oh, maybe I should do that." So what sort of things that you're teaching? You have students. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to teach. I think there are a lot of performers who never want to teach, who never do, or who kind of fall into it and it wasn't really part of the plan. I think it was always a strong component of what I wanted to do. I've loved teaching. In high school. I loved tutoring people in math or whatever. So it is a very different skill set than performing, but it's one that I love. And that feels very much like an act of generosity, like giving something. And having had strong mentors, I value building relationships to hopefully be one as well. And I mean, I work with little kids, a lot of youth, but also a lot of adults in all different sort of stages of their development. And some have professional aspirations and some don't. Some are doing this out of joy, as sort of a joyful activity. So I enjoy that very much. In terms of advice, I guess that was sort of part two of the question, or things that I would teach. Beyond the, sort of obvious technical, healthy pedagogy, and thank goodness I've had incredible examples all throughout my career and have continued with my own professional development. But I actually I have notes down here. I was like, I need to make sure that I say this correctly. I think things that I have learned and that I really try to ingrain in students that weren't necessarily ingrained in me, and I think that was just a product of the time. We live in a very different time now, like for instance, post Me Too, all these kinds of things. Very different conversations we're having. So a big thing that I teach my students is trust your intuition.
Hmm.
We actually know ourselves and our voices and our bodies really, really well. So of course, it's my job to teach them these things, but also to teach them how to teach themselves. And at some point, intuition needs to take over. I think learning to set boundaries is a really important thing, and also with ourselves, because the temptation for those of us, who perform, most of us are fairly ambitious, and it can be very tempting to just do it all and say yes, 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 and then you get in this burnout cycle. And I've been in it many, many, many times. So many times. So, how do I set boundaries? Take care of myself, take care of my health, manage my personal time, as well as, setting boundaries with other people, and that's okay. And it's okay to say no. And then this is just kind of an extension of what I just said, is like unapologetically taking care of yourself. Because I think, especially in universities, and maybe this has changed, when I was going through university, the emphasis was very much on like, work hard, work hard, work hard, like pound the pavement. And for sure, like there has to be that element to make it, whatever that means, make it as a musician. But also, if we're thinking in terms of longevity, the people who take care of themselves and take care of their health and take care of their instrument are the ones who stay in it for much longer.
Amen to that. So I wanted to just touch quickly on the fact that you have received recognition from organizations like the Alison Foundation. I don't know if I said that right.
I know. It's a mouth. It's the nitition, not at all phonetic nitition.
No, it's not. And the Strauss Foundation. So can you tell us a little bit about those two recognitions and organizations? What you get?
Yeah. So nitition was a biggie. That was it was an award. I believe it was $10,000 that I got. It was a huge one, and I got it at the end of my first year master's at U of T. And what happens is students could submit, and there's categories like different instrumental categories. There's the singers category. There's also a musical theater category, and there's a drama category. I can't remember if there was a visual art. And you can submit sort of a portfolio, or in the case of a musician, a recording and an application to your school. Then they set up an anonymous committee, or as anonymous as it can be when all the teachers know how you sound, to listen through these recordings, and they don't know who is performing what, and they choose who they feel the strongest applicant is in this group for their school. So then that person goes on to the national level, and then at the national level, again, there's a committee from different parts of Canada, and it's sort of a dark audition. They don't know who's singing. And as a committee, they listen to these various recordings and they select who they think the strongest voice or instrumentalist or whatever is. That was a huge deal. It was so exciting and meant so much. And music, as we all know, is an incredibly expensive endeavor. Just keeping up with the studying. As a singer, even if you choose not to study privately continuously, there's always going to be, you need to pay pianists, you need to pay coaches. Of course, there was tuition. I was living in Toronto. It funded my university career, or helped to fund it in part. So
that's wonderful. So looking back, what would you tell your younger self just starting out on this path as she dreamed of a career in music?
Well, partly some of the things I said before, in terms of what I would encourage with students, but I think something that I have learned, because I'm in my 40s now. I'm not a young artist. I'm in a very different stage of my life and in my career, and have some perspective that I didn't have before, is that element of longevity, like be in it for the long haul. You don't need to rush things, and also to be open to allowing the career to kind of pivot. I think as a young singer or a musician, you have this idea of like, I'm going to play here, I'm going to sing here, and this is what I'm going to do. And there's so many opportunities that come your way that could even be non-performing related. Like, I also examine for the Royal Conservatory and adjudicate. I don't think I ever would have thought that I was going to examine.
I was going to ask you about that. When you're not singing, what sort of things do you love to do, and what are some of your passions outside of music? So that's interesting that you're helping out with adjudicating. What sort of other things help you recharge?
My other passion outside of music is the outdoors. Very passionate about the outdoors. And I think some of it is, I grew up in Western Canada, and there is a cultural element, especially I grew up mostly in Calgary, like Vancouver, Calgary. It's right by the mountains. I mean, there isn't a person who lives in that city, or it's very rare, who doesn't ski and hike and camp.
Right.
And growing up, we were in the mountains almost every weekend. And, I started downhill skiing by the time I was 4. And I'm very passionate about that. I'm very passionate about conservation and about the environment. And one of the most therapeutic things for me is backpacking, like hard hiking, going in the backcountry where you're totally off the grid. Nobody can reach you by phone. It's amazing. No social media. You just uncharge, and like your television becomes sitting at your campsite, looking out over this lake that only you and your hiking partner is on. And this sense of, and I think we have this in music as well, of really kind of hard, grueling work with a really big reward at the end. And I think that sense of that. So that is my single biggest recharging thing, is anything outdoors related.
Wow, that's great. Well, what a comparison to this city girl. And finally, so after the exciting concert with CBSO, again, single tickets will be available soon for this performance. And what's next up? What sort of roles or projects are coming up that you're really excited about that you want to share with us? And where can people find more information about you, your website and things like that?
Absolutely. So, I'll start with my website before I forget. So yes, I do have a website, and it has finally been updated. My web person was on it, or I was sending her so much stuff this summer. So my website, pretty easy to remember, www.allisonarends.com. So it's ALL.
Here's a tip. You don't need to say www anymore. You just say the name of the website.
Perfect. There we go. See, I'm old school. AllisonArends.com. There we go.
Much easier too, right?
Yeah. And
what are you going to be doing?
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting, exciting year. So, on a bit of a personal level, I have come off 2 years of some fairly serious health challenges, and had to pull back with some things. And I just recently have had completed a surgery, and it's all done. My life is totally clear, like, myself into this year and kind of get back to my old self or a new normal. So this definitely is a transition year. And in fact, I have been in touch with some composers about some potential collaborations. I have a pianist that I love collaborating with, and we are curating a program of uh, a recital program that explores like female artists, authors, um, like religious figures, political figures, poets, this kind of thing. Um, and that's been a really exciting project to explore some of that repertoire. So I feel like this year is kind of a slower start and kind of being open to what the opportunities are going to look like and go, okay, this is another pivot in my career.
That's
But
amazing.
so excited to sing with CBSO, and that's going to be my first concert of the season.
Yeah.
Um, so my first kind of big thing back since I've overcome these other things. So it feels very special.
It feels really special, and I wanted to thank you so much for joining me today, Allison, because it's been absolutely joy, and I know about the health issues that sort of put a kink in your career. It's just like, how am I ever going to get through this? Am I ever going to be able to work or perform or sing again? And I'm so glad that you're on a great healthy road again. And it's going to be an amazing upcoming performance with CBSO. We can't wait to welcome you on the stage. So again, ladies and gentlemen, it's October 4th at 8 p.m. at the PC Hall Theatre at the Chinese Cultural Center of Greater Toronto for our 40th anniversary season opening called 40 and Beyond. And tickets are available and information about the concerts at cathedralbluffs.com. So I highly recommend you run, don't walk to the box office and get yourself some tickets or a subscription. The early bird subscription discount ends on September 2nd, so you can subscribe to all 6 concerts. So we have some fantastic singers that are going to be singing in the last concert in May. Emily and Queen, who are going to be performing in Mahler's Second Symphony. Have you performed the Mahler?
I haven't, but I love it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible. So it's an incredible season. So again, thank you so very much for joining us today. And I think this was a heck of a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that a lot of our audience members enjoyed this interview as well and learned some new things. I certainly did. So thanks again, Allison.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Yeah, that was fantastic, and we had a lot of fun. And tune in for more interviews, and we'll see you otherwise on the stage.
Sounds great.
Okay, bye.